Hi, this is author A.R. Shaw with Apocalypse Queen Radio. We are live on Facebook Live. This is a production of Authors on the Air, and I'm live with author Tom Abrams, and he's got a lot to talk about with his new series. You're welcome to join us, ask questions on the right. I think you can see that. Please let us know if you can or can't. There may be a bit of a lag. I'm broadcasting from a hotel room, and I can see that Tom Abrams is perfectly fine, but I'm delayed. Sorry.
Is that a comment about the broadcast or just in general?
That's just me. Sorry. But I can see you, but my mouth keeps moving. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. And let's see. So you are a television journalist in Houston. And you recently spent 22 hours on a highway during Hurricane Harvey. Did that affect your new series? Did it affect your writing for this new series?
So I think so. You know, it's one thing to write about the apocalypse. It's another thing to kind of live through one. And one thing that I write about significantly throughout the series, the Alt-Apocalypse series, is that, and a couple of characters have this discussion towards the end of book 2, is that an apocalypse is what happens to you and your own world. It doesn't have to be something that affects all of civilization. The grid doesn't have to be down all across the United States or even an entire, portion of the world. It's something that affects you. And the way I characterize it in the book is that Harry Truman said that a recession is when your neighbor loses his job, a depression is when you lose your job. And that's the way I think the apocalypse is too. Whatever happens to you and changes your world forever is apocalyptic in your own life. And I witnessed that too many times to want to discuss during and in the weeks after Hurricane Harvey. The night the storm hit Houston, we were right by a bayou, my photographer and I, and we were in what ultimately was one of the hardest hit areas. And the water started coming up, and we told our producers we needed to go live right now and we need to get out of the area. So we did, and we ended up going backwards up an off-ramp, up on kind of a curb to avoid the water that was beginning to fill up rapidly. And we decided to get onto, in Houston, it's called the Loop, and it's essentially the interior loop that goes around the city. Houston has 3 loops, but this was the inner loop. And we got up there, it was elevated, and we could see down to where it was flooding. And so the issue became, once we were there, we couldn't leave. And so we were there for 32 hours. We witnessed rescues. We interviewed people live on TV. There were people being dumped from helicopters onto the middle of the freeway. We were wet and in our clothes and consoling people and telling their stories for 2.5 days. And that really was just the beginning of it, because then there was the process of telling the story once people had been evacuated and once people started ripping things out of their houses. And so it was, it had a pretty profound effect on me, and I know some other reporters who dealt with it for as long as we did, not to mention the people whose lives were turned upside down and out of their homes, and some are still out of their homes, and the people who lost their lives. So, I mean, for me, it wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been, but we're out in the middle of it. And I think it did inform my writing in a way that maybe I wouldn't have been able to write about it previously. And because these events, some of them are much more small in scale and realistic. And the one I'm writing now, book 3, is Torrent, and it's about a flood in New Orleans that happens not from a hurricane, but just from a storm. And so in writing the characters, when they're in the water and they're seeing the water rise, I mean, I'm writing that, it's in third person, but I'm writing it from what I've experienced.
Right. Wow. Hearing my own voice come back to me, sorry.
That's okay. It's called non-interrupted fold back. It happens.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So, what catalyst have all of your books covered? Like,
Sure.
your all of your books. Like, what have you covered?
So the very first books I wrote in this genre were the Kindle World books in Stephen Conkley's world, and so that was precipitated by a combination of an electromagnetic pulse and meteorites. So that was the first, and then through his convincing, I decided to kind of leave the world of action adventure and political conspiracy and move into the post-apocalyptic genre, and I wanted to do something different. And that's very difficult to do because it's such a popular genre. The end of the world is very popular. So I decided to kind of do this post-apocalyptic Western, very stylized, and that was brought about
by Battle.
Yeah, that was the Traveler series with Marcus Battle, and that was brought about by a plague that essentially was started in refugee camps after wars in both Ukraine and in Syria, and it takes place in the near future. Then I wrote the Spaceman Chronicles were based on a coronal mass ejection that from the sun essentially has the impact of an EMP, and it tells that from the perspective of both a guy stuck on the space station when the power goes out and his family fighting on the ground to survive once the power goes out and civilization begins to degrade. So it's telling both their struggle and his to get back to Earth, and then once he gets back to Earth, he's nowhere near home and he has to get home. So there's that one. In this series, it's 13 different apocalypses. The first is a nuclear disaster, ash. The second is lit. It's a series of forest and urban fires that all happen at the same time in Southern California. Okay. And then the one I'm writing now is Torrent, and that is about a flood.
Okay. One thing I've always loved about your books is your sense of humor. I mean, you slip this stuff in, and when I read it, it just it catches me. I pick up on the subtle humor, and I love that. So there was one, and here's an example. There was one. I hope you don't mind if I read it. It's Danny. He's traveling the shoreline, and everything is covered in ash. And he says, for as far as he could see, longingly pining for the green and brown color of the wrack that no longer dotted the shore, until now he'd never missed giant kelp. That's hilarious. I mean, it's just, if you've ever seen a giant kelp, you're just, I mean, it's funny. It's such a dark, terrible scene, and yet you slip humor in there in the very last second, and it was brilliant. I thought that was brilliant. And do you do that on purpose because of these scenes?
I do it for a couple of reasons. One, I think I always try to have a character or a recurring theme that brings some sense of humor, because I feel like the theme is so dark, you need a break for a second. You just need a break just to kind of laugh or to, because I think one of the ways in which we cope with, I know in the news business, one of the ways in which we cope with dealing with dark things all the time is a sense of humor. Sometimes it's gallows humor, sometimes it's just silly humor. But so I think that's a coping mechanism that all people have. And in the Traveler series, once I introduced Lou, I felt like Rising was the fourth book in that series was so dark because it's all about revenge. And the way I began that book, I know irritated a lot of readers because of what happens. And so I felt because it was so dark and he'd been through so much, he needed somebody to bring this humor to the book. And so that's how I used Lou, as this sarcastic kind of person who was going to make the reader, hopefully, not only like her, but laugh. In Spaceman, there are all these jokes about Canada.
I love that. Yeah.
Thanks. And so there was that. And in this book, some of the characters, I think, or maybe even the narrator's voice tends to kind of sometimes say funny things or just point out the absurd. Sometimes I look back and I'm surprised I even wrote some of it.
Yeah, I do that too. I'll go back and think this is terrible, and then I reread it and I'm thinking, that's actually pretty good. It happens occasionally. I'm not seeing the comments. I'm sorry, guys. This is a new platform. Do you see comments?
I can respond to some of it. So Michael Hooley said, Jack, isn't it past your bedtime? I guess he's referring.
Where are you seeing this? I'm so sorry. I don't see anything.
Walt Browning said hi. Michael Hooley's watching. Sheila Dixon.
Hi, Walt.
Jack McGuigan is watching. Chuck Carol Not saying you guys are doing great. Julie Adams says hi. MC Allen likes the split screen.
Hi guys.
Jax likes Marcus. Pam Stack is watching. And Ned's brought up the fact that Lou repeated.
Oh, here. Okay, now I see it. Yeah.
Okay. Lou repeatedly called Marcus Dorothy, which now my narrator, who is so many of our narrators, Kevin Pierce, frequently refers to me and Dorothy in chat messages, just because it's funny. So, and hi to Mike.
Funny. Okay. Hi guys. Okay, I have some more questions. So, you're a news reporter and you have been all over the world, and I'm trying not to give what do you call it? Secrets? Now let somebody tell me. It's late and I have not slept much. What's it called? I'm not. What do you call it whenever you give away the story? I'm over 40 and I've lost my mind. What is spoilers? Spoilers. Yeah. So there's something called the Oasis.
Yes.
Okay. And this is also something that you brought up. Okay. So first off, I recently read. Gosh, man, my mind. What's the other book that recently came out? Ready Player One with the Oasis.
Well,
right?
So what's funny is
that was interesting.
Well, so I actually started writing this before I read Ready Player One, and the only reason really that I read it was because the movie's coming out and I knew my son was going to want to see it. So
I did the same thing. Yeah.
So I've read it, and I really considered in the editing process changing the name of my Oasis because of that book. Book. But I decided that that they're such different things, and if it makes somebody think of a great book by another author, I'm fine with that. I mean, everything is ultimately derivative anyway. But mine was called the Oasis, obviously for a different reason, I think, than it was in Ready Player One. It's a surreal, virtual reality world where people escape there. But mine is a literal oasis, and it's an acronym for something too. So.
Right. So in your travels, you've been all over the world. Is there really something like the Oasis? Like, you've written about some other things that are actually true, but
Sure.
They're not supposed to be true. So do you know of anything in the world that's, our friends would want to know?
Well, okay.
Is there anything like the Oasis? Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there is. I mean, just like you have to there's no possible way that out there somewhere in the vast universe there's not life out there, right? Somewhere there are bunkers like what the Oasis is in the apocalypse. I mean, without question. First of all, there are too many people with too much money, so we know that they exist. But I also think, and we know in the past that our own government has created bunkers in various places that you wouldn't expect. So that they're all over the world. So yes. Now, whether it's through some private group like what I've created and is it under a museum in Southern California? Probably not.
Right.
But
okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Because I totally get those questions. People will say things like, so in Graham's resolution, where is Cascade? They want to know where the whole, group. No, this is fiction. But yeah. Okay. So, okay. So like Maggie, she went kind of full wolf on a particular character. And that's a real thing. I mean, have you seen events like that happen with your canine friends or whatever? I personally have seen something like that happen before. Just a family pet, just, when someone in their family's been attacked they turn into a dog you've never known.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything like that happen?
Firsthand, I've not seen that specifically. As a reporter, I've been in situations where a seemingly docile dog who then and wagging his tail all of a sudden, for whatever reason, feels threatened, changes rapidly. So, and I wanted Maggie to be a character. I mean, first of all, it seems to be that a lot of people who are prepared or who like this genre also like dogs. And I have 2 dogs.
Yeah.
And so I wanted there to be a character. Danny is such a lonely guy. I wanted him to have somebody.
Yeah.
And so I figured a dog would be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they need something. Okay, so, you're, my age, sort of, and we have, kids about the same age, and you write about a difficult time here with college age kids. Is it hard for you to talk about, to write about something like that when you have children that are going off to college? It was hard for me. It was like personal for me, like, gosh, how would my son, my daughter get through this if something were to happen? Did you draw on what you think would happen, or what you would hope that you would hope that they would foresee these things?
Sure, a little bit. And I mean, and I'll disclose, I mean, my daughter goes to the school that I write about.
See, I wasn't going to say that.
Okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a big school. But so, yeah, I mean, the thing is, Southern California, I think, is the perfect place, other than Texas, to set. I think Texas is a great place for apocalyptic books because it's its own country, and it's so diverse. Southern California is great because there's so many natural disasters that happen there anyway: earthquakes, fires, floods, mudslides, and so I thought it was a good place to set the story. And then when my daughter coincidentally, I mean, I've been thinking about the story for 2 years. So when she coincidentally ended up going there, I thought, well, I'll put college kids in it. Because I can, at least at this point in my writing, I mean, I can relate to the way they talk and what their interests are and what they care about and what they don't. And so I felt like the characters might come a little bit more naturally that way.
Good. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at some of the comments. And does anyone have any questions?
I saw a couple.
I'm. Go ahead and I don't see them, so go ahead and
so Chuck,
point out who it is and what they're asking.
Sure. So Chuck Terrell said, "How has your dark humor impacted your writing?" I think we touched on it a little bit, but I think I think that I hope that it makes the reader's experience, it gives them a sense to catch their breath. And, I think the more I write, the more I understand the rhythm of a story, and the more I know when to put in the humor and when to leave it out. So I think that's it. Jax asks, Lou is going to figure big time even more in The Next Traveler, right? He asked hopefully. I will tell you, and I've not really talked about this, I'm not planning any more in the Traveler series. I have considered doing a complete spin-off series where Lou is the central character. Marcus...
Lou's a great character.
Thanks. Marcus is... I'd have to think of what next to do with him. I've put the guy through the ringer multiple times, and I'm not sure what the next book would be. So that's part of the reason I've put it away, and it's my most popular series, so it's hard to do. But I kind of feel like if I'm going to write another Traveler book and Marcus is the main character, that there has to be a motivation for that. I may go back to that world with a series of Lou books that are completely set aside and have nothing to do really with Marcus other than maybe mentions. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm so wrapped up in this alt-apocalypse right now that it's hard to think about any other series. Julie Adams just finished Ash today, and she liked it. Thank you very much. Aaron says hello from Southeast Tennessee. Chuck, when I mentioned the underground bunkers, Chuck mentioned the Greenbrier, which is in West Virginia, and that's one of the ones. And I think Nick Smith talks about that in some of his books. Let's see. Someone talked about liking cats. And Don wants
They all love the animals, boy.
Yeah. So what's your next question?
Don Moore. Okay, my next question is, let's see. So sorry. With your day job, how do you find time to write? This is my day job. I don't know how in the world you do this. I don't get it. So how do you do it?
I don't know.
I mean, there's self-discipline, but yeah.
Well, and you might hear my dogs barking in the background. This is my wife's bringing my son home. But so I write. This is life. I work weekends, and so I have Thursdays and Fridays off, and I pretty much I drop off my son at school, and I go to Starbucks, and I sit and I write for about 4 or 5 hours. I have daily word goals. I want to get anywhere from about 10,000 a week. However, I've got to get it. And if it's writing at night, it's writing.
What I try to aim for. Yeah.
Yeah.
10,000 a week. Try to get 2 a day. Try. Yeah.
And it started out with me writing, 500 a day, and then it went to 1,000. Now it's between 2,000 and 3,000 because I can't write every day. I do something book related every day, but sometimes with how odd my hours are with my day job, it's difficult sometimes to find the block of time that I need to get into it and really, really write. So, waving to my son. So, but
that was a Cheryl question. Just
no, it wasn't.
That was a Cheryl question.
Oh, it was a Cheryl question.
Yeah, it was Cheryl.
I thought you said terrible question. I'm like, no, it wasn't.
No, that was a Cheryl question. It was a great question, Cheryl. But she has some others here. She says, are you planning to co-author any books anytime soon, and with whom?
If that were to happen, I couldn't talk about it. But no, I don't have any. I don't have any official plans. I'm so busy, wrapped up in my own narcissistic world that I don't have time to share with anybody else.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. Now, her other question had something to do with something you've already touched on. The Traveler series is one of her favorites, and she hates to see it end. And do you think that Battle may come back and pass the torch to somewhere? We've already kind of covered that already. Let's see. Oh, I mean, when we talked about pets and things, you had one of the lines you wrote was, she circled around twice, talking about Maggie the dog. She circled around twice. Curling into a ball on the wide bench seat. You do the details very well. And besides the humor, you also write in great detail. But that is something that animal lovers absolutely love. In one of my books, I'd written how Sheriff's ears twitched from side to side like a radar, And I've gotten so many comments on stuff like that. Readers really pick that up. Do you watch your dog for stuff I used to watch my dog for stuff like that, just to be able to describe things, the little details throughout your day. Do you pick them up and say, I'm going to put that in somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always
putting you on the spot.
I'm always trying to observe. I've had dogs my whole life.
Right.
In fact, the dog in the Traveler series that belongs to Rudy and then becomes Lou's 50. That was the name of my dog growing up. And we've always had dogs, and so to me, in being a news reporter, a lot of times we have very little time to tell a story. So the minute details, the things that give something color, we may or may not have time for. And so I'm ultra conscious, sometimes maybe too conscious of it in my fiction writing, where I want to add that stuff. Maybe sometimes to a fault. I get bogged down in the details, but yeah, I spend.
I think it's perfect. I think you did a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah. One of the other, this was one thing that I only recognize this because of a book I recently read, and it was The Holocaust of Hiroshima, and it was about the first-hand account of someone who survived that.
Right.
And he just happened to have been underneath a lorry, an iron lorry at the time, and miraculously survived the bomb dropping. But in your book, you say the outer fringes of the blast wave caught him as it dissipated. And you go on to talk about how, he received, this particular character, Clint Anthony, he received first-degree burns on the back of his neck. Did you look at the effects of bombs dropping. Is that where your research brought you to? Because as soon as I read that, I thought he's been researching the Holocaust. I mean, the Hiroshima bombing.
Yeah, and I try to do that with every book. There are little things. Sometimes it's funny. I'll spend a day on something that's maybe 2 sentences. That's not to say that everything that happens in my books can happen. It's not to say that everybody, I mean, Marcus is a little bit of a Superman. He's not going to, in real life, he wouldn't necessarily survive everything he endures. And that's not to say that everybody in Ash would survive. In fact, the book is left in a way where, maybe they do, maybe they don't, in the long term. But yeah, I do.
Right. You don't know what happens to the kids. Yeah.
Right. And so, no, that's okay. So I spent a lot of time reading about, first of all, blast radius, the size of the bombs that I put in the book, and what their blast radius would be versus some other kind of bomb. The internet is great. There are a lot of tools where you can pick a location, pick the bomb. It tells you what the blast radius is, and then
simulators.
Yeah, and then I would read. I looked at a lot of photographs and read firsthand accounts of people who experienced either Hiroshima or Nagasaki and what happened to them. And there was one thing I don't know that I ever got into the book, but I kept sticking with me, is that a lot of the survivors, their nails would turn black, and they had this black stuff. Yeah, black stuff that would always come out of their nails. I don't think I ever got that into the book, but so I don't use all the research that I end up with. I mean, the most research-intensive book was Spaceman by far, because I've never been.
Oh yeah.
And so I relied a lot.
I actually that was the first book that I listened. I'm not an audiobook listener. I don't pay attention. But I was driving back from my research trip to Deer Trail, Idaho, to see a Trident missile silo. It's crazy. But it was like in the middle of February, and I was driving all the way back by myself, all the way to Idaho, and I listened to Spaceman 2. And there was nothing around to distract me. So I really listened to this book with our buddy Kevin Pierce. And it was pretty cool to listen to how much research went into that. You can get really lost in the research. I know I can.
Yeah,
and you have so many resources for that.
I had to rely on. I'm fortunate to live here in Houston, where NASA is, and so I know some people.
Johnson Space Center.
Yep, very gracious with their time, including an astronaut who I'm still friends with, who spent a lot of time helping me. And then there's a lot of YouTube stuff, like the descent at the end of the book. There's a great video on YouTube where there's a European astronaut who discusses exactly what it's like during reentry in a Soyuz, and so I used that. And then
wow.
In fact, I cut out a lot of stuff because it got boring.
Yeah,
there was too much detail.
Yeah, you can't do the info dump, is what I think what they call that. Are you seeing any other questions? I'm so sorry, but I'm not seeing the questions.
Thank you. No, everybody's just, I should do this every day because everybody seems to like my writing. Let's see. Do you guys read each other's books? Yeah, we do. I mean,
yes.
I will say one thing, and you may feel the same way, that since I started writing as much as I do, I don't read as much for pleasure. However, what I do is I do listen to audiobooks. I have a very long commute to my day job and back. And so I listen to audiobook. Right now I'm listening to The Looming Tower. So,
I watched it. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how but yes, I've read most of my contemporaries' books, at least one of them, because, you appreciate what other authors are doing in a way that as just a reader, not writer, it's very hard to do. You know what pains that person went through to tell us.
Right. Okay, so there's always a segment I want to do, and it's called How Readers Can Help Authors, because we do need your help. We can't do all this by ourselves. So this time, Tom and I talked about this. This time, what I want to do is, if you are not a member of BookBub, BOOKBUB, please go to bookbub.com and become a member. And then, like all of your favorite authors, like me, like Tom Abrams, like all of us. And then please, and I know you guys hate doing this, but leave a review. But the cool thing about BookBub is that you don't have to leave words. You can just hit the 5 stars, and you have no idea how much this helps us. So please, please do that. That will really help us a lot. Say that again?
It's free.
I didn't hear you.
BookBub doesn't cost anything.
It's free.
Yeah.
Right. It's free. You can like your authors and put those reviews in there, and it really does help us. So are you seeing any more comments?
Yeah. So Chuck asked what news agency I work for. So you could, I'm really
going to let you answer that.
The station that I work for is very supportive of my writing, but I am not allowed to mention them in support of my writing. So if you just Google my name, and the first 3 letters of the alphabet, you will see where I work. Not to be evasive, yeah. I'm just trying to be evasive dogs. And MC Allen wrote, definitely leave reviews. Yeah, I mean, I think reviews on Amazon, even more so than on Goodreads. Amazon, the way their algorithms work, a review is like 5 sales or 3 sales or 10 sales. The way it works is really important. I mean, to leave a review is equally, if not more important than even buying the book, because of what it says to Amazon about
right.
the connection you've made with readers. And they make a lot of decisions about placement and organic visibility based on reviews, not just on sales.
Right. And you know why readers really don't like to leave reviews. And one suggestion I would make, and I don't know if this works for you or not, but you can write up a 20-word review and save it somewhere in your notes, and then copy and paste if that is something that helps you. You know, Amazon might not like me for that, but it will help. So that is, maybe that will make it easier. I don't know.
Chuck asked about
another tip.
And it is BOOK.
BookBub?
Yeah, it is one word. And BookBub is probably, right now, it is the single biggest advertising site for authors. If you can, and they have an incredibly interactive mailing list. And if you ever see a 99-cent book shoot to the top of any ranking list on Amazon, it's because they were in a BookBub mailer. But BookBub mailers are very hard to come by because it's so competitive to get a spot in them. But they have other services, and one of them is a review service, and that also really helps.
And okay, so I'm seeing some of these now. So Angie Knox says she finished Ashen about 30 minutes ago. And she says, thank you, Tom. You never disappoint. I don't.
Thank you, Angie.
Yes.
Thank you for reading it.
And then
I have to say, and I know that you would agree with this. I mean, when my first book was out, I wondered if anybody was going to read it, and other than my family, and how was I ever going to sell? My goal was to sell 500 copies ever. Like, that was just my goal, was 500 copies ever. The idea now that, you know, thousands of people all over the place choose to pick up a book, something that I wrote
all over the world,
in my head, all over the world, and then become invested in it. I can't even explain what that's like. I mean, it's incredible. You know, it's like someone saying that your kid is fantastic, because, you know, you spend so much time for every, you know, people read these books in, you know, maybe a day, maybe 2, but I've spent months on the book. And so
3 months writing a book, and they read it in half an hour.
Right.
And then they want the next one right now.
Right. Which is a good problem to have. I mean, it's good to have readers.
It's a great thing.
Who want to read the next thing. And we do write as fast as we can.
But you wonder why we drink. So, I'm just kidding. But that might be why.
Hemingway said, you should write drunk and edit sober.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's terrible. I was going to say, I have to plug myself, but I'm going to plug you as well. So today, or just for a few more days, Surrender the Sun, the bundle, is only $4.99 for 3 books, just for a few more days. Just going to say that. So, and then please read Tom Abrams' new book, entire new series. And I read it, loved it, but I love everything he writes. He's very clever and hilarious, and I really enjoy your books. So yeah, you're the actual first author I've had on the show. I'm like, okay, who's next? Because after Tom Abrams, what am I going to do?
Funny. So MC Allen asked if this book is coming out, and I'll answer the question, and if you want to answer the question, but my next book is Lit.
You can do it.
Book 2, and it comes out in July. I'm trying in this series to have a book out every 2 months so that it gives you enough time to read it and digest it, check out some of my friends' work, and then come back to the next book. And I know you're working on a bunch of stuff right now, too.
Yeah, I am working on a new series, Remember the Ruin, and I'm shooting for the end of July. We'll see. There's a lot of things going on right now, so but it's a good thing. It's all good stuff. So hopefully we'll see what happens. Let's see. Don Ed said something that he had read Sedition, and he was just amazed at the details.
Oh, thanks.
You do that. You're great at that. Yeah.
That was my first book. Well, I take that back. My very first book was a crime thriller, and it was horrible. But I'll tell a story since we have time. So Michael Connolly went to the same college I went to. We didn't know each other, but most of you know Michael Connolly. I was
sat on an airplane next to Michael Connolly.
I'm jealous. So anyway, I wrote him. He was I think Darkness More Than Night had just come out. So he was a big name, but he wasn't like the superstar that he is now. And I wrote to his website and asked if, because we went to the same college, if he would please critique my novel. Not knowing at the time what an imposition that would be for somebody like him. But, and his web person responded and said, yeah, no, he doesn't do that. I was like, okay, thanks anyway. So like a month later, I get an email from Michael Connolly. And he says, I'll read it. Just don't bug me about it. And
that sounds like him.
And understand that I'm only going to tell you the bad things about it, because it does me no good to tell you how great it is. You won't get better that way. And I was like, okay, fine.
Very honest.
So 9 months goes by. And I had one of those moments where I'm sitting at my computer and I go, it's been 9 months. Do I type him a note or not? I can't say the number of times that I started to type an email to him and delete it. But finally I did, and I said, hi, I know it's been a long time. If you haven't gotten to it yet, that's fine. And he wrote me back like within a couple of hours saying, my laptop fried and everything on it is gone. I didn't have your contact information. Send me the book again. I'll get back to you immediately. So I sent it to him again, and he got back to me in 2 weeks. And he sent me, I still have it in a drawer right here, a 9 critique telling me how much he hated the book. But it was
glad I didn't show him mine on the plane.
but he went, I mean, he clearly read it. And he did tell me what he liked about the book that was fresh and new and he wanted more of. And he told me about all it was really about story building. And he gave me the best advice, which was, you want the reader to get in the car with you and go for a ride. And the minute they want to get out, you've lost them. You want them to go the whole way with you. And so I always try to keep that in mind. And I still have that 9-page critique. And I'm going to Boucher Con. And he's going to be there, and I'm going to stalk him.
Yes, I saw that.
His 9-page critique of my unpublished novel.
And he's going to love it.
Because I always, when I start a new series, I always go back and I look at it. I always pull it out of my drawer, and it's printed out. I don't have it in email anymore. It's printed out, and I go back, and it's dog-eared, and I look at it before I write a new series to remind me of what it is I'm supposed to do and not supposed to do in any given book. And I'm incredibly, he doesn't know who I am, but I'm incredibly grateful for him taking the time to tell me how bad my book was.
Yeah. No, we all need those things. We need them.
I'm plugging in my
computer. Look and see if anybody.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, we can't answer that one. Sorry.
What was one of?
Not even going to repeat that. So.
Yeah. So the most recent comment says, it's like I just saw you. That's my coworker who I just spent the last 2 days with in Austin, Texas, being funny because he knew I was doing this.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. That's too funny. Okay. And he's gone. He disappeared. Gosh, I got a question. I'm sorry. What else is going on with you? So do you have plans after Torrent?
Yes. So, okay. So there are a couple things with this series that, since you're here, part of this live stream, and every time I say series, my Apple activates Siri. But
oh gosh, that's annoying.
So, yeah. So, a couple things. One, Ellen Chang is a character who will die in every book in chapter 2. She dies.
Do you not like this person in real life?
I don't even know who Ellen Chang is. I wanted to. Okay. So this goes to my dark sense of humor, and the idea is that by book 4 or 5, people are going to figure out that Ellen Chang dies in a different way in every book in the second chapter. And the way every book is going to begin is it throws you right into the middle of the disaster. Then it talks about Ellen Chang, who's there at the inception of the disaster, and then it moves forward. So that's one thing that happens in every book. The other thing is the titles of the book all have a meaning. And I'm essentially, they're going to be like, you know what an acrostic poem is? Where the beginning line of the poem, if you take all the lines together, they spell something on the left-hand side. Okay?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Having to do with the theme of the poem. So,
now you're going to have us all writing this, you're going to have us all doing this. That's too funny.
All the titles of the book.
Okay.
All the books add up to something. So, the next book, I think, is going to be an asteroid. I'm not 100%, but I think so. Then after that one, I think, is going to be a plague, and then I think maybe an energy crisis. At some point, there'll be a zombie thing, so we'll figure it out.
You're going to do a zombie. You're going to do a zombie thing.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be your typical Walking Dead type thing. I mean, but there will be a zombie element to it. I just think, with 13 different stories, you got to come up with one. And Don Ed's already figured out the first 3 of the acrostic poem.
Okay. Oh, has he already?
Yeah, he posted.
Okay, that's too funny. Oh, no spoilers. Michael Hooley, he says my day job is checking out all the coffee shops. That's too funny.
You post a lot.
And I do, right? I post a lot of pictures. I'm in Ohio today. I had some research to do here, and I met with my great friend, Kate Morris, who's a post-apocalyptic author, and spent the day with her, and that was fantastic. And then Michael says that this format is so much better. You guys are okay with this? You like this? I'm not so sure. Is it, you're okay with it? So please let us know that.
I was disappointed because I thought I could just do this on the phone, and I learned I had to get showered. And
I know. Same here. Like I had to be presentable and stuff. So, I'm usually in my pajamas. Yeah. And I was first billed with this, Pam Stack, the producer, she told me, you can do this in your pajamas. And then this thing happened with Blog Talk, and now we had to, and I said, yeah, somebody lied to me. so sorry.
Very funny.
Okay. Is there anything else that you guys want to know before we go? Because some people need to sleep.
I think we're good. But thank you so much.
We're good?
Yeah.
Well, gosh, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for chiming in. And we'll do more of these, and they'll be at more presentable hours. but yeah.
Thanks for accommodating me. Great. Thanks, Annette.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. And thank you for, not saying no. So I appreciate that very much. And everyone, please buy his book. It's totally worth it. I really enjoyed it. I love his work. So
thanks, Annette.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
See you later. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.